Hey everyone, welcome back to another recap podcast from SNXweave, where we give quick weekly recaps of news and important updates from the previous week from the Spartan Council and core contributors, as well as discuss what the Grants Council and ambassadors are up to, so let's get started. We made it through the first week of the Epic. All of the new councils are in full swing, so let's talk about what they were up to last week. The SIP to update the SNX liquidation functionality is still in audit, but is expected to be wrapping up shortly. The final stages of feedback are being incorporated, after which SIP 252 will move to implementation. The direct and curve integration SIPs are also code complete and currently in testing. These are scheduled to go out on the release with SIP 252, assuming all of the testing goes well. As for staking v2, much of the front end is complete, so stakers should be looking for the new UI over the next 2 weeks. An early v3 testnet release is also expected in the next week or so. The SIP presentations are picking back up again to get the rest of the upgrade through governance. A couple of them happened yesterday actually. During the call last week, Adam asked why SUSD can't be issued in both v3 and legacy markets, and Noah explained that they need to be able to distinguish how much debt v3 is issued. Last week, there were also a few SIP presentations, so let's briefly review them. The first was SIP 280 for Perps v2. This SIP proposes adding upgradability capabilities to the current futures implementation as a first step to add new features to it. Leo explained that the current futures contracts are immutable, and in order to add new features to it or fix a bug if discovered, there needs to be the option of upgradability. KSET asked if they're not currently upgradable, how do you add that functionality? And Leo responded by saying they are currently testing alternatives to migrate data from the current futures site to the new contracts. Then Caleb asked what this migration process would look like, and Leo explained that individual open positions would have to be moved over, and they are considering freezing the positions and asking users to move them over themselves. The next Perps v2 presentation was SIP 281 for trading fixes and improvements. This SIP improves the underlying mechanism of next price orders to be time-oriented and take further consideration into maker and taker fee calculations, where a trade flips the market skew. Fief explained that there would be two major changes: delayed orders and cross-side maker-taker fees. On delayed orders, Fief explained that current next price orders are non-deterministic and give way to a suboptimal user experience for traders. If the intent is to minimize front-running, the same can be achieved through a time-based delay. As far as cross-side maker-taker fees, order fee calculations in the current state do not behave correctly in the scenario where a trade is both a maker and a taker. The next presentation was SIP 279, also a Perps v2 SIP. This last SIP proposes a redesign of the synthetics perpetual futures mechanism to enable unconstrained open interest limits, broader asset compatibility, and lower fee execution. The main upgrades proposed in this SIP are premium and discount pricing function, which is basically just a simpler implementation of SIP 181 for simulated liquidity, and puts a soft limit on how much skew can exist in the market. The next upgrade is the velocity-based funding rate. Instead of fractionalized skew being directionally proportional to the funding rate, this update proposes that it would represent the funding rate velocity, or rate of change of the funding rate. This creates a much more predictable funding rate behavior. And lastly, plans to move to an on- and off-chain hybrid oracle that could yield better performance. Fief explained that a common theme of this SIP is wanting futures markets to be as low risk as possible for whoever is underwriting them, which creates the most scalable perps markets in DeFi. He also said Perps v2 is expected to be in audit by late October and on mainnet sometime in November. In Grants Council updates, the team has a new member, core contributor Max. He's currently living in Europe and joined Synthetics as a CC in October of last year, and has also been at Aave for a year. He is a front-end developer and has recently been experimenting with Solidity a bit. The rest of the council gave him a concise TLDR briefing of what the Grants Council role entails, how the team operates, and the current projects and initiatives. Duck brought Max up to speed on the objective of the NFT project and explained where things currently stand. There will be 10,000 NFTs released, and there are currently 30,000 stakers. So the team is trying to figure out when the snapshot of active stakers should be for the whitelist. Duck brought up the idea of potentially scaling the minting cost based on demand to try to capture as much of that initial demand as possible, since the proceeds will be used for public goods. As for the stats page, the data is currently being validated, but the team was confident it was close to being ready for release. Cavalier, however, has identified some issues with it that may have unfortunately set the project back a bit. They're currently considering several options for correcting the problems with the data, and this is actually a perfect place for Max to step in and leverage his development experience to help work out the best way to proceed. Lastly, the Council discussed the possibility of V2 of the SIP SCCP submission site that has the option of editing existing proposals. It's not a high priority right now, but they may revive it later in the epic if there's demand and funding available for the upgrade. Currently, they're more focused on bringing as much visibility as possible to the site. In Ambassador Council updates, the new team of 5 is operating in full swing. Gumboats is a returning ambassador, but Kevin is serving his first term. The new council hosted another Spartan Space last week, this time with Velodrome. We got to hear from Alex and Tao. Alex is one of the founders who mostly focuses on business development, marketing, and operations. He started mining crypto at home during the pandemic and instantly was hooked. Tao is also a founder and has a background in economics and finance. He was working in tech before he moved over to the Holy Land of Web3. As a brief background, Velodrome launched at the beginning of June as a DEX AMM solution to properly incentivize protocol liquidity. Alex described it as a protocol's protocol that's meant to incentivize active liquidity. He added that many protocols have been having issues building deep liquidity on Optimism, and Velodrome addresses that need. And they actually just hit $2 billion in volume due to the extremely low fees. Alex said the reason that fees are so low is because we built this as a public good. The biggest measure of success for us is we were brought here to solve a problem for the ecosystem, and we believe we are helping to solve it. They didn't really know what to expect at first, as they were the first fork of the Solidly model that the team felt really addressed the issues from V1. Many previous attempts to incentivize liquidity delivered short-term TVL spikes, but significant drops once the incentives were gone. The ambassadors asked the guests how successful Velodrome's airdrop was in onboarding and maintaining protocols. Alex first elaborated that the VE NFT positions were not only distributed to current leading protocols on Optimism, but also to protocols not yet deployed on Optimism. He added that after receiving an airdrop, some of these protocols that are deployed on other chains have started to deploy on Optimism. Velodrome has onboarded 31 new protocols so far. Lastly, the guests left the audience with a quick roadmap to look forward to. They plan to continue onboarding as many partners as possible and making improvements to the DApp UX while continuing to drive protocols to deploy on Optimism. Overall, it was a great call, so don't forget to catch the recording in case you missed it. And that's it for today's updates. Be sure to check out our weekly recap blog post, share this podcast link, and let us know what you think and what you'd like to hear more about from SNXweave. Thanks for listening.